Hey, hey guys, what is up? Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Sayyid Hassan Ali coming to you today from New Orleans. So today I'm doing another video called Son of a Sociopath, part 2. And basically there's this phrase that's been coming to mind a lot and around this experience of being a son of a sociopath, and it's the idea of trading peanuts for gold, like forceful transaction where I have a bunch of gold, right? And it's been taken, and now peanuts are being given in exchange, and then once I become kind of reliant on the peanuts, that the peanuts can take into, like, I think it's a really good metaphor. And one of the things I try to do on these type of videos I do, Son of a Sociopath, is I'm sure there's a lot of like people out there who've had experiences like dealing with a sociopathic family member, and like the way you can overcome that, and just to be able to share that experience and relate to other people's experience who've been in that position, because it's not an easy position to be in. It's something that's really difficult to explain. It's something that the sociopath himself will guard against you ever coming out with it to other people. He'll make it sound like, or she'll make it sound like, you're the one who's insane, you're the one who's crazy. In fact, when they're the one who's sociopathically manipulating at every opportunity that they get. And when you start unmasking that, that's when the real fear or insecurity starts to really go haywire, or really go like through the roof, and that person becomes even more controlling than they used to be, and even more destructive toward your life than they ever were before that moment, even though before that they had no concern for your welfare, or totally using you. um, and so that's like relating to that. So this idea of like gold, and having gold, like for example, for me, my gold is like, I remember growing up and like always wanting to get married young, because I could always see how my dad was, the way he treated my mom, and I always wanted to get married young. And then I was also raised Muslim, and in Islam, we're not a religion that believes in celibacy. We believe in marriage as a way of preserving modesty. So we believe that sexuality is perfectly natural, that it's good, and it should be fully enjoyed within marriage as soon as the individual turns pubescent. That's what Islam teaches. And so I always wanted that. I remember being like 10 or 11 years old, already liking girls, and being like, I just want to get married when I'm like 15, 16, so I can enjoy my sexual prime. And I won't go into details here. I'll probably go into details in different videos, but that was kind of taken from me from my dad. Like, by the age of 21, I figured out that he was just like, the path he had laid before me of going through medical school and then getting married, the path that the Pakistani community that I grew up in kind of laid in front of me. Like, I at 28, I might graduate from medical school and then kind of get engaged, and at 30 get married. And that was already too much for me. Like, I didn't want to do that because that was too long. And so at 21, I drop out of college with the intention of starting up a business and getting married as soon as the business is going, right? And at 21, my, like, super focused, super driven, super motivated to get married, and I wanted to do it within 5 or 6 months. And I can't go into details here, but the same sociopathic way of behaving, the constant manipulation, constant shifting of context, never taking any moral responsibility for any behavior, led to like that time just increasing, 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 and that business never actually succeeding. And then you know but that same pattern of behavior that I was trying to overcome by dropping out of school, and then doing my own business so I could get married much younger than the projected, like 30 years old, that same pattern of behavior, because I remained reliant upon my dad, no matter what the context was, that pattern of behavior continued, where every time he would promise something, every time he would make a promise or set a context or make a commitment or give me his word or say something, it was never reliable. It was never something I could depend on. It was never something I could, um, take into account as something that was real. But of course, you grow up loving your dad and you grow up like relying on your dad. It's natural. Like, it's very difficult even in your like neurology to overcome an inherent trust for your father. And so like over time, as I learned, like not only learn but condition myself to stop like trusting what my dad was saying and just kind of take him more in the way he was acting rather than what he was saying. um but I just, it never got to a point, like just through different manipulation, different circumstances. He had eight or nine, like my whole family, the eight or nine people that I grew up with thinking of as family were all like his pawns. And so when I started like disassociating and like mistrusting and like using more discernment in relating to him, all of a sudden there's eight or nine people, including my mom, like would kind of like use emotional manipulation and emotional string pulling to get me to trust him again or get back into a situation where I was relying on him. And that pattern continued for the last 10, 11 years. And to be honest, it's still not fully gone. I've done the work to completely remove now just him and me, and I've removed all the pawns. But what happens is when you remove all his pawns, you remove his whole kingdom, and the only thing is like you're relating directly to the sociopath. What happens is that because they're sociopathic, they no longer have an incentive to care. Like they don't have an incentive to really be invested in your success or invested in you achieving something. So it just becomes this game where like to whatever, like for example, like the Pakistani community is the context or whatever. And at this time, like 10 years after, when I was growing up, I was super well respected, everyone liked me, everyone cared about me. But as that 10 or 11 year period went, because I went completely in the face of Pakistani bullshit cultural values, and like I really embraced Islamic values, um, you know, there was a distance that was created, and my dad's narrative about what was going on in my life and how I was fucking up rather than he was breaking his promise and never letting me progress or never commit to something long enough to actually achieve success at it, and completely changing the context every few weeks, every few months, never keeping his and that was the issue, that I wasn't like any one of the few projects, any of one of the projects that I conceived of and wanted to execute on over the last 10 years. If I had committed and been able to stay with any one of them would have been successful. So the problem wasn't the idea. The problem was that I wouldn't be able to execute on it, because just taking it out of a family context, it's impossible for an entrepreneur or any type of person, any type of enterprise to succeed if the expected resources don't show up. And that repeatedly happens, that enterprise will fail, right? And so that's kind of been the situation. And so like the going back to the idea of like gold and peanuts, and so we're at a point 10 years later where I just feel like totally alone, because my family is totally codependent on him, and like he has no incentive to make up for what he does, except like I even kind of don't want to say it, except like fear that he might feel of like what I might do if I just totally lose it, or if that type of thing. Other than that, there is no incentive for him to actually do anything now. And so now in my life, I'm like totally like need to be self-reliant, and that's the only real thing that I know. That I need to be totally self-reliant and reliant upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that I don't really have anyone who really cares about like what I need or what I want in my life. And I am like an orphan in that degree. Like the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that there's no one who really cares about like what's been done to me or what is being done to me, or what I want or what is good for me. There's no one in my life. None of my blood is like that. My dad's family was never like that. My mom's family pretended to be, but they're codependent on my dad. So once my dad has kind of lost interest, they've lost interest, and I've also just distanced myself from them because they were also always the pawns my dad used to betray, to gain my trust and then betray me to him. The mere Jaffers of my life, so to speak. And So this idea of taking gold and giving peanuts, right? So after this realization that I'm completely like I have no one except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in my life, which is always the case for everyone, but for me especially, like I don't have any type of family that is in any way sincere or genuine about caring about my life and caring about defending me from like the harm that's being done to me from my dad. It's just totally me, right? And so I have to deal with that. So but this idea of like the gold and the peanuts, right? Like it's basically my youth, the age when you're supposed to be married, when you're supposed to enjoy life, when you're supposed to be with a wife, you're supposed to be in mating with someone, you're supposed to be in a marriage, in a committed relationship, especially Islamically. And even if you're not a Muslim, just inherently recognize, biologically speaking, like sexual chemistry will never be the way it is in your teens, after your teens. Once you're 20, even in your 20s, once you're in your 30s, your sexual life will never be anything the way it's supposed to be. And Islamically, we believe that that time is created so that the man and the woman bond, and then they create family together. That's a lasting family and the basis of the familiar structure for all of society. And so like I feel like that was what was taken from me, and it's not just like a feeling. Like it's very clear that that's what was taken from me through just a series of broken promises and not following through and stuff like that. And then what's being offered back to me is like peanuts, but the peanuts don't even actually come through, right? It's like, okay, now you need treatment, okay, you can get stem cell, or you can do this, or you can do this, and the whole series of things is said, but of those like 15 things or whatever beats, all of them are only trying to reestablish the baseline of what I would naturally be at 15 or 20 years old, right? So to reestablish that baseline, which is required effort, input, energy, time from me to do all those things, and money from the person who caused the situation, right? To bring me back to a baseline, and the baseline won't even be what it's supposed to be. Like there's no way doing all this stuff at 30 will bring you back to the way you should feel at 15 or 20 in the sexual relationship. That's just never going to happen, right? No matter what you end up doing, that's just no longer possible. But now the promise that you're going to get to do these things, so you're kind of close to it even if you don't get there. Now the promise is there that it's going to happen, right? Like this promise is kind of there, but then there's no follow through on the promise either. But the promise is so seductive because this is something really good that was due to you, that was your natural right, that was your birthright, that was taken from you. And naturally, as a human being, you want justice and you want it back. And some form of it is being promised to you, but it's never being delivered upon, right? It's never being delivered upon. And what you're actually getting is like these tiny peanuts, which are kind of just letting you live, like they're just letting you live, but you're never getting this, and you should have had this, and this is not something you're gonna get. And if you have a sociopathic parent, or you have a sociopathic family member, or a sociopathic boss, or any sociopathic person who has power over you in some form in your life, I'm sure you can relate to this video. So I'm putting these out there because I want people who have sociopaths in their life, or extremely narcissistic or hypocritical people who've done extreme damage to their life, to feel like that they can talk about it and they can relate about it to someone, and that they're not alone. Because I know that the first time I ever felt like a breath of air and felt human after a long time was when I was with friends in Boulder, Colorado, and they were like processy friends, or like people who are into like self-help and spiritual development and stuff like that. And I could openly and honestly just talk about everything that happened in my life with my dad. That was the first time I could really come to terms with what it was, and actually like remove some of the shame and the guilt from thinking that it was all my fault. But it wasn't, because this just sometimes people have power over you, and if they don't exercise it morally, then there's not much you can do about it. And it's not like you have to be in a victim mentality, but it is like a victimization. It is like an objective victimization. Someone has wrongfully exercised power against you, they've hurt you, and they've done damage to you. And regardless of the subjective suffering, the consequences are real. There's nothing you can really do about it in some circumstances. And I want there to be some type of legal action that's possible for this thing. Like, there needs to be some type of recourse, because I'm a pretty like spiritual person, I'm a fair person. I won't do something, even though there's so much damage that's been done to my life. I won't do something that's excessive, to get retribution. But like, I'm sure people, either they kill themselves, they go insane, or they hurt other people. That I'm sure that happens on a regular basis with people who are in the type of situation I'm in. And so I just want to make sure that other people have a resource. So thank you for watching, and please subscribe. Talk soon. Bye.